Hey, how's it going? Ray Reese here, Anytime Fitness, Chestnut Hill. Here with another Q&A with you and Ray. This previous Wednesday, I had done sort of a basic squat tutorial, and I wanted to follow that up. I wanted to pair that with a question that I've gotten, one that I get a lot of. It's the difference between squats and deadlifts. I'm going to go over, there are a number of leg exercises, and I didn't want to just talk about squats and deadlifts today and then have to do X more videos to cover the other leg exercises. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the difference between squats and deadlifts in the first section of this video, and for the remainder of the video, I'm going to explain the differences between the other exercises that there are. Now, there's plenty of exercises, but I'm really only going to go over sort of the 7 basic ones. But we've got our squats, we have our lifts, we have our presses, we have our pushes and pulls, lunges and split squats, step-ups, and your hinging exercises. And like I said, it's not going to be a tutorial on those respective exercises, but just telling you what they work, how they work, and what the sort of the differences are. All right, so squats, deadlifts. I will tell you in advance that the term squat causes a lot of confusion in the fitness industry, even amongst professionals, because the term is used elsewhere. See, there's squat as a movement pattern, right? So if I drop my hips, I'm squatting down. If I got, some keys or something I dropped and I drop my hips, I'm squatting down, right? Well, that's just the movement. The exercise, a squat exercise, all right? You have the weight, you have some weight above your waist. Right? You're going up and down. Let me get to where you can better see me. All right, so weight is above your waist, going up and down, up and down, right? With a lift, the weight starts below the waist. It stays below the waist, all right? So this is a deadlift. Another way to think of it, the weight is dead on the ground and you have to lift it. All right? Now, where confusion comes in is if people are standing there with the weight up here and they drop down and up. Generally, that's called, if it's there or if it's here where they don't go to the ground, it's not resting on the ground. There are variations that are called Romanian deadlifts. But the issue is average persons will assume that if I have to squat down to get into position, the exercise must be called a squat. And that's not always the case. No more so than if You know, if I'm here, this isn't a squat, it's a row, right? Now you can say a row with a squat, but the exercise is a row. I may need to squat to get into position. So this is squatting as a motion or a movement pattern. This is the exercise, all right? Sure, I'm squatting down, but the exercise isn't the same because, as I mentioned, with one, the weight is below your waist. The other, the weight is above your waist. That makes a huge difference with regards to balance and stability. So what this means is, as it pertains to, say, functionality and fitness and like usefulness of the respective exercises, a squat is a better fitness exercise. Deadlifts are a more functional exercise. What I mean by that is that with squats, you've got a lot way more going on. You know, like if the weight is up here and you have to stabilize and balance, right? I need to stop moving this. So you have to stabilize and balance way more. And you also don't have the luxury of the weight ever resting at all. Because like with a deadlift, you can put the weight down. Squats, that weight is married to you until you re-rack it. And I say deadlifts are more functional, like that's literally what you're most likely to do out in the real world. You gotta help somebody move a couch, deadlift. Child fell asleep on the couch, gotta get them, you know, up the stairs or what have you. Groceries, suitcase, bags of money, whatever it is. Those are deadlifts. We do deadlifts pretty much almost every day. We squat every day too, in that we do the motion, but we hardly ever do a squat exercise outside of the gym. So like nobody ever takes something off of a shelf, puts it on their back, and then goes down and up with it, and then re-racks it. If anything, I may take it off. I may squat down with it and put it down. So that's kind of a half. That's not even a half squat. It's a eccentric squat, a negative squat, maybe. But those are the main differences. You know, the balance that you need, the amount of endurance that you're going to need. There's a huge difference between a deadlift and a squat. Or there should be if you're using enough weight. If you're only using, like, you know, you're using like 5 pounds, you know, 5-pound dumbbells, or yeah, so. If I have this sucker, relative to my body mass, I weigh 270 pounds, 275, somewhere in there, right? Relative to my body mass, holding it up here or holding it down here makes like 0.1% of a difference, right? But it will make a world of a difference once you get into challenging weights. All right, so we said we got squats, lifts, presses, pushes and pulls, lunges / split squats, step ups, and hinges, right? I'm gonna skip ahead. I'm gonna go right into hinges because this is relevant to our lifts. So, generally speaking, this is called a deadlift. It's a standard deadlift, or a kettlebell deadlift. If we were using, we don't have. If I was using a bar, which, all right, actually, don't have a bar, but that's fine. All right, so pretending that this was a bar, all right? So if this were a bar, my hands would be outside of my knees. I would drop my hips down, right? I would do that. Or I can have my hips back in a hinge and pull that bar. Now, this is where some confusion comes into play. If I were using the bar and I had my hands in between my knees and I dropped my hips down and came back up, that would be called a sumo deadlift, or it'd be called a sumo deadlift. If I had the bar up here or whatever, and I had a wide stance, right? And I went down and up, that can be referred to as a sumo squat. So what winds up happening, people will sometimes, they know that sumo in some form or fashion can mean wrists in between your knees or feet wider than, because like I can be here and I can do a stiff-legged sumo deadlift, right? Stiff-legged sumo deadlift. However, that doesn't mean that everything where your hands go in between your knees is a sumo deadlift, and it's not a sumo squat. Sorry, it's not a sumo squat. It's a deadlift. If the weight is below your waist, it's a lift. It's a lift. It doesn't matter whether it's 2 feet or, it's 2 feet or 1 foot. Why do I even do that? One leg, right? Doesn't matter. If it's down there, below the waist, it's a lift. Now, as I mentioned, we have this hinging motion, all right? We hinge at the hips, back is straight, not dropping the hips. Hips are going back. This, still a deadlift, right? Still a deadlift. Deadlift, right? It's all a deadlift. Now, that being said, we have another exercise that is where you hinge, called a good morning. Generally speaking, you may see this in a warm-up. You may see it in yoga. Just hips are going back, arms are forward. More specifically, hips go back, the resistance is forward. So I can hold my weight up here, take my hips back. All right. So hips are going back, hips going forward. Now, you may see people in a lot of cardio classes, they'll have the body bar, and doing the same sort of thing, so they have the bar behind their traps, hips go back, hips go forward, all right? Those are called good mornings. Now, how does a good morning differ from a stiff-legged or straight-legged deadlift. Now, I said stiff-legged or straight-legged deadlift. Your legs, despite the name, are never going to be perfectly straight, all right? So they're not locked out. The knees aren't going back. The hips are going back. Knees are soft, all right? So that's our hinge, right? Then we have presses. I'm not gonna be able to perfectly demonstrate a press because you would normally do this on the machine, on the leg press. Basically, a press is where your body stays in the same place and you push the weight away from you. So if I were using this chair, and this is not a perfect example, it's actually a fairly flawed example, but I would like you to get the visual. All right, so that's a press. Now, the reason why this is flawed is that there's nothing to return the chair, right? There's nothing, I'd have to pull it back like that, but this is a press. All right, actually, I may have discovered some, royalties, that's called the Reese press. That is called the Reese press. So, any of you guys out there trying to put this on DVD and sell it, Reese press percentages. But even still, generally speaking, whether you're on the incline leg press, where you put the plates on either side, or you're on the seated leg press, where you're pushing like the plate away and you have the weight stack that moves up and down, you know, you're staying in one place, you're pushing the weight away from you, but in those instances, the weight is pushing back the entire way, which is why me pushing this chair wasn't the best version of a leg press. However, it does highlight or lead into the next type of leg exercises, which is pushes. So behind me, I have a sled, all right? I'm gonna demonstrate a sled push. Now, the main difference with a push from any of the other things is that there's no eccentric resistance. There's no resistance coming back at you. You push the weight forward, you push the resistance forward, but there's not anything coming back at you, which can help to make it a little bit safer if you're sort of like rehabbing and you're trying to sort of see where you're at, depending. Of course, if your physical therapist says don't do that, then, you know, don't do that. But, you know, on days where like my back is sort of not cooperating, or my knee feels a little tweaky, I may do this, I'll do it with care, but the reason why I'll choose this, is because, again, I can apply as much or as little pressure as I like. I know it's not gonna come back. Now I'm going deliberately slowly so that you can see me. And I said we also had pulls. So you'll see a lot of times people, when they have the rope and they'll pull it back like that. That's not exactly what there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I mean. When I mean pull, when I say pull, I mean getting the harness and putting it on and then having to pull it, tug it. I'm sure there's some more correct fitness term for it, but I love the pushes because, like I said, there's no push back from it. So it means if you have to bail, if you have to slow down, you can. If you're doing like a squat or a deadlift, that weight is constant. Which reminds me, going back to the hinges, going back to those good mornings, one of the things that's really a challenge with the good morning, what makes the good morning good is that you can use a little bit of weight and get a lot of resistance, okay? Because the further forward, the higher up you hold the weight, the more resistance you're gonna get as you go forward, all right? There's a whole lot of physics terminology, but the further up that weight is, the more resistance you'll experience exponentially, which also makes it sort of a danger if you're working through any sort of lower back issues, because you might not know that this is too much until you're already sort of in the danger zone. And then you're stuck. But what makes it good is that you can use a little bit of weight, and the nature of leverage and such will help the resistance increase. That being said, it does have its limitations in that you have to have really good balance and flexibility. And then there's only so much that you can do relative to your body weight, because since the weight is going forward, it's traveling forwards to a degree, even with your hips going back, that weight is still gonna wind up further forward than where it started, and it's gonna wanna pull you. And so the more weight you have forward, the more it's just gonna wanna pull you down to the ground. So it's not gonna be a strength thing, it's just gonna be a balance and physics terminology thing. We're just gonna boom, right? So pushes, pulls. If you're pulling with the harness, you're not gonna have to use your arms, so that's a thing, yay! But you're gonna have to have way more balance. It's just another challenge. But the other good thing about this is pushing that sucker is both good strength and cardio, because you can push it constantly. You know what I'm saying? You can just keep pushing. You go for like 15 to 30 seconds to take a break, you're gonna feel that heart rate. So it's something that's fairly easy to manage, to modify, to do. It doesn't require a lot of balance, doesn't require a lot of skill. And there's not a whole lot of risk so long as you're approaching it with care. That being said, one note, I'm going a little bit heavier than what I would start out with. Actually, I'm going way heavier. This is, what is this? 180 plus 45, 235? No. 225. So this is 225, right? Now, one thing that you don't want to do, I said I wasn't giving a tutorial, but still, safety matters. You don't want to come at it here. That's going to put way more pressure on your spine. You want to have all of your weight behind it. And if it's light, then you can just push it forward. That's great. But if it's offering you some resistance, you want to take tiny steps like a choo-choo train. And then as you go, you can, increase your stride, your cadence. Wait, your stride. But yeah, start off slow, small steps. Lunges and split squats. So your split squat, your basic split squat, just one foot is back, down, up, okay? So down, up. Noticing that my front heel stays flat on the ground, doesn't come forward, stays flat on the ground. My knee does not come past my hip. It goes down. It's either at my hip or behind, right? That's your split squat, all right? And you can, so if you stay there, right, if I just go down, up, you can really, really, really work that quad, but you're also working some of the quad in the front leg, but you're working those glutes and those hamstrings. Lunges are pretty much traveling split squats, alternating split squats, all right? Boom. I take that back. Lunges, yes, lunges don't have to be traveling. You can do alternating split squats, right? So boom, down, up, down, up, all right? You can travel with it, but you don't have to. Now, the advantage is that due to the nature of the exercise, you're able to load up one particular muscle group, one particular leg at a time, and thus put a way greater load on that leg than you would if you were using two legs. I mean, you don't really even, you hardly need any weight. You just stand there doing, 8 to 16 on one side and 8 to 16 on the other, you'll feel it. You add anything, whether you add something in your hand here, two things up here or up here, whichever. The risk with this, however, is that it requires, it requires a whole lot of skill. It requires a lot of balance. It requires a certain degree of flexibility. And there's a risk that if you have any sort of lingering knee issues, it's not at all good for persons with any kind of knee constraints. And like I said, it just requires a lot of balance. But it's balanced, but it's worthwhile in that same token because it'll help you work on your balance. I just wouldn't start off with like a bar, if you haven't done them before. So moving on to our last exercise, we have our step ups. So like the lunges and the split squats, they're really going to work one side, work one side at a time, with the difference being you don't have another foot or leg to assist. It's really just one leg doing that exercise. All right, so all right, so there's a couple of different ways to approach it, but generally speaking, you want to have your foot raised. You want to have a nice, flat, stable surface, nothing that's going to be rocking. Like I'm being really exaggerated. But if you put your foot on there and it wiggles, it's like, you don't want that. Heel all the way on there, not heel off the back. Heel all the way on, flat, sturdy, stable. Your knee shouldn't be above, it can be at hip height, but it shouldn't be above it. But as close to hip height as you can get. All right, going up and down with control. So up with control, down with control. We're not trying to jump up and then plop down. We don't want to feel it in the balls or heels of our feet. We definitely don't want to feel it in our knee, right? It's come up, down with control. That rear foot should roll down. Now, that being said, if you have some balance issues, if you're a little tentative, you can come up to there, right? You could put both feet on if you like. The caution here is that if you put your foot up too quickly, you negate the exercise. So some people will be here and they'll put their foot here and they just do a basic squat. We want to work on the balance here, right? Some people sometimes will stay on one side, say do 8 on one side and then 8 on the other. Other times we'll alternate. So boom. Now, it's not very likely that I'm going to alternate with a step this high because it raises the risk of injury, of tripping, falling, what have you. I usually have one foot and come up and down, focus on that. And that's some place where we can add resistance. We can have a kettlebell or something. So I would have the kettlebell, whichever foot is going to be planted, that's the side I'm going to have the kettlebell on. All right? Or so you can see a little bit easier. It's on the same side as the foot that's planted and it doesn't swing forward. Right? And you want it on that same side because once this leg goes, once this leg lifts you up, this leg and this arm and this half of your body is going to try to pull you this way anyway. So if you have this over there, it's just going to throw you way off. Now I should also mention, going back to your lunges or your split squats, your shoulders, wrists, and hips should stay in line, all right? Okay? So even if I'm traveling, we don't want that kettlebell swinging forward. It stays shoulders, wrists, hips, okay? Otherwise, you run the risk of putting more pressure on your front knee, your lower back, and all of that is unwanted. All right, so I hope that answers any questions you may have, or begins to answer any questions you may have about the respective exercises. At a later date, we can go into more detail with regards to the specifics, you know, of how to do this, how to incorporate them. You know, is one exercise better than the other? No. I mean, there are some that are just more practical. It depends on your situation and circumstances. I would say that if you're going to the gym and you just gotta knock some things out and you don't want to risk injury, you want to just keep it simple, squats, you know, deadlifts, and leg presses will generally have you covered. But again, you can do these other things. I mean, anytime, like I mentioned earlier, you may need to do a deadlift to get your kid up to your shoulder, right? If he fell asleep on the couch, but to get them upstairs, you got to do those single leg step ups, right? You drop your keys or something or anything, you know, you're gonna have to hinge. Lunges, you don't have to go heavy with lunges. It's primarily a bodyweight exercise, but when might we use a lunge? That's what I'm also didn't go over. Generally, we do a lunge if we're ever sitting on the ground. All right, so we use a lunge to get down there, right? But if I want to get back up, let's say we're at a picnic, you know, there's some flies or some bees. I might grab the potato salad, you know, or fruit salad or whatever, right? And that's that split squat, right? So now I'm probably not gonna do a walking lunge, but all right, that's that split squat. Or even the end of it is if I had done a reverse lunge. Pushes, sled push, car gets stuck in the mud, zombies trying to burst through the bathroom door, you know, any of those things that you might encounter out here in Chestnut Hill. Presses, probably not gonna experience that a whole lot unless maybe you've dropped your glasses or something behind a dresser and you put your back against the wall and decide to try to push the dresser with your legs. So there's that. And then we've gone over lifts, your grocery bags, your bags of money, suitcases, kids that aren't in suitcases, and then your squats, which your squats are mainly going to help you with body weight stuff. So getting off the couch, getting out of the car, right? Getting out of bed, right? It'll help preserve the integrity of that skill. And these are all skills. I should mention this isn't just about an exercise. Each of these requires a certain amount of technique and discipline in order to get right and not get wrong. But anyway, I hope this has been informative. Please keep sending me questions. Please keep reaching out. As I say all the time, looking forward to seeing you in here sooner than later, but we are committed to your safety and your health first. We would all love to be able to pay our bills a little bit better, but safety and health is our number one priority. Your safety and health is our number one priority. So that, again, this is also why we're offering virtual training, you know, personal, small group, and team training. And this is also beneficial for even when we open back up. If you're still uncomfortable with coming, we'll still have this available such that you can utilize it. Because as I've said many times in the past on plenty of previous videos, we are here for you anytime, all right? So thank you very much. Ray Reese, Anytime Fitness, Chestnut Hill. Take care, see ya, bye-bye.